What's up guys, Jay here, and today we have another surprise announcement reaction video. So Ghost Ship just let out this below deck post about Rogue Core, which is basically where they say what's going on behind the scenes. In today's post, they talk about apparently a new kind of enemy that we're going to be finding in Rogue Core. So in traditional fashion, I thought it would be fun to read through this and give my genuine reaction to this news. So if you guys are ready, let's go through the creating the creeps for Rogue Core and see what's in store for us today. So the post is titled Below Decks at Ghost Ship, Creating the Creeps for Rogue Core. Meet one of the prototype horrors awaiting the reclaimers in the depths of Hoxus. And the artwork looks really interesting so far. Hello miners, here's another peek behind the scenes. Please keep in mind that everything below is a work in progress. We can't promise that all or any of this will make it into the game as it is described here. This is just to give an idea of what we're working on and where things might be headed. Enjoy. Okay, so yes, definitely big disclaimer. All of this is subject to change since the game is still very early in development, and what we read here might not actually be made into the game. However, based on just the image, I can tell that this looks insanely interesting. It can be disgusting. It's a rainy Tuesday in February and Casper is creating the crawler. Casper Olsen is a 2D plus 3D artist and a new hire here at Ghost Ship Games. Well, welcome to the team, Casper. One of his very first assignments is to draft up a prototype creature for Rogue Core. This prototype might not make it into the final game, but it is a first stab to set a direction for the new game's enemies. For now, it's called the Crawler. Casper's job starts with a project brief from the game design team, who lay out a general vision for what sort of creatures they'd like and how it might behave. The brief, true to its name, is only 11 short bullet points. One of the bullet points near the bottom reads, "It can be disgusting." So then they give us an image of what looks like those bullet points that they want for the quote-unquote Hoxus crawler. It says that it is a humanoid creature that crawls on all fours. Already, that line right there is very interesting because that's very different than anything we have seen before so far in any of Deep Rock Galactic's enemies. It is a deep dweller predator soldier used to high pressure and temperatures. It doesn't need light and it's not scared of it. That line right there kind of makes me think that there are enemies that are afraid of light. It's not morphed, deformed, or a suffering creature. It's not a zombie or an experimental or parasitic infected horror. It is born grown like this. Born/grown? What does that even mean? Its skin is pale and thin, stretched over its bones. Could have areas with another layer of skin or thicker skin layers for protection. Could have bones that are fused together to form armored areas. Thick, exaggerated, strong tendons instead of muscles. Imagine muscle shapes, but with super thick muscle fibers. Naked, I like how they have to add that in there. Layered, opening, peeling elements, weapons. It can be disgusting. Careful not to make it too alien. Should strive for the uncanny valley feeling, means has to have human features. So immediately when I'm reading this, I'm just getting Skinwalker vibes from all of this. And it is very interesting to think about this because all of the things that they're talking about in these bullet points are very unlike any of the enemies that we have seen in normal Deep Rock Galactic. It's not insect-like, it's not like thick carapace armor-like, it's humanoid, it's skin, it's fleshy. It just seems very, very interesting. The Rogue Core team recently got together to watch the 2005 horror film The Descent. Side note, very good film if you have not seen that. I highly recommend it if you're a horror movie buff. The movie's claustrophobic, atmospheric, and cave-dwelling ghouls set the mood for this project. Quote, "I guess this is something like a goblin, or at least more classic descriptions of goblins, like a wet cave goblin," Casper says. "The goal here isn't to make some demonic hellspawn, nor some suffering, deformed creature. The crawler may look disgusting, but it's perfectly formed for its habitat. It's well adapted to the dark and perfectly comfortable in the hopeless depths of Hoxus's core. Down here, it's the reclaimers who are the trespassers." So this is very interesting because at first when I was reading through this and when I saw the images at the very top of the post, I thought to myself, okay, is this some kind of lost miner or reclaimer that was stuck down here that got sort of infected or deformed in some way, but they literally shot that idea completely down in one of the bullet points. So this is something that is naturally created, something that is bred down here, something that is incredibly unique because if it was something that was native to Hoxus normally, we would see it in the actual normal Deep Rock Galactic game as well. So this is something that is conditioned and naturally comfortable in the deep, dark, dank core of Hoxus, which is very interesting. Going back to the bullet points for a couple of seconds, I want to read on a couple of them that sort of stuck out to me. Layered opening and peeling elements, weapons. That seems like it's going to have the ability to sort of like fold its limbs or something into some sort of weaponry, and that sounds kind of interesting. So it's going to be kind of able to adapt, it looks like, to sort of combat, which I'm very interested to see what that's going to be like. Could have bones that are fused together to form armored areas. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. I'm not sure if it's going to take bones that it already has, or maybe it'll do that in the middle of combat, but it is certainly something that I'm curious about. And lastly, careful not to make it too alien. They specifically don't want it to look like an alien figure. They want it to look like something that resembles a human, which again brings me back to the idea of a skinwalker. This is going to be a really interesting creature no matter what. The nature of the beast. During this initial conversation about Rogue Core's enemy design, the phrase body horror gets thrown around a lot. Jakek, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, art director at Ghost Ship Games, is emphasizing a sort of uncanny valley feeling for some of the enemies in Rogue Core. Casper says, quote, "We want things to seem near human, but not familiar. Right now, at least, we're not looking at going so alien and bug-like as we did in Deep Rock Galactic. While the crawler may be humanoid, different drafts of the creature borrow traits and behaviors from across the animal kingdom. Casper is experimenting with the idea of the crawler being able to hang from the ceiling in a dormant state, to be awakened by the headlamp of a careless reclaimer. Another proposal makes the crawler more of a perching watcher, peering from the shadows as it monitors a threat. The inspiration here comes from prairie dogs, and the way an alarmed pack responds to nearby predators. So to accompany this, they show us a couple of concept arts for the crawler design, and these look really, really cool and really terrifying. It's clear from this and from this whole entire post as well that Rogue Core is definitely going to have a much more scary and horror-like feel as compared to normal Deep Rock. Deep Rock Galactic has a very sort of charming and almost funny kind of feel to it. It does have a couple of times where it can get scary, but it's not really that terrifying. This seems like it's going to be going full-blown into the horror scene, which I am all for. And one thing that I am noticing, and I'm not sure if they're just using this for terminology, but they keep using the term humanoid, but all we've been interacting with through all of Deep Rock has been dwarves. It's been dwarves, it hasn't been humans. So is this telling us that there are actual human-like creatures in the Deep Rock Galactic universe that we just haven't seen yet? I think it's an interesting point. Again, they could just be using this terminology to make it easy for us to understand. But in any event, I think the idea of seeing something like this, hanging from the ceiling and just sort of napping, and then we accidentally wake it up, is going to be terrifying. Or you just look in the darkness and just see it crouched there waiting. I kind of want this to be one of those types of enemies that is very dangerous and you don't want to show up. I don't want this to be kind of like a normal enemy. I want this to be something like that you come across not too often to make it even more terrifying. I think that would be a really good idea. Like we explored when sketching firearm concepts, form must speak to function. This creature's physique needs to make sense for its behavior, but also for a game design perspective. It should give you an idea of how it might move around, attack, or where its weak point is. Recognizing these design cues comes, at least in part, from points of reference from other games, but it's also drawn from the brain's instinctual ability to recognize threats. As you compare this unfamiliar beast to more familiar predators from the animal kingdom. Quote, "This is a lurking, creeping, stalking enemy," Casper says. "It definitely shouldn't have humanoid intelligence, but it's got more than simple hive mind of the glyphids. It's something cunning and instinctual, maybe at the level of a coyote." So that's an interesting comparison, because the bugs in Deep Rock do definitely function in just sort of a, oh, someone's attacking us, we all have to attack them, and they just kind of follow suit. But here it seems to me that they're going with a much more sort of this thing can think and sort of plan. Kind of has a bit of an intelligence of its own, which is terrifying to think about, that this thing can act independently. Ultimately, I think the idea of a coyote comparison is a good comparison, because that is kind of how they function. And again, I'm very interested to see what they're going to be doing with this. 3 steps to a prototype. The crawler takes shape in 3 phases. 2D sketches come first. Casper does these digitally using a tablet and Photoshop. This initial phase is about throwing designs at the wall and seeing what sticks. Anything is on the table, so Casper's got to come up with lots of different options for the game designers and animators. He needs to give them difficult tools to play with in terms of how body parts and features might turn into weak spots, attack patterns, or specific movements. And then so we get a couple of other images here of what looks like face models, and these look like various designs that they are using for potentially what the crawler might look like, and they all look fantastic. I think if I had to pick a personal favorite, probably the purplish one on the top left with the tongue is the most terrifying, but the one that has almost like a dwarf-like face on the right, it looks a lot more uncanny, kind of like it looks like a dwarf face almost. So if they're going for kind of an uncanny valley, especially in the Deep Rock universe, I think that would work very well. The two that you can kind of see in the background, they also look terrifying, but I don't think that they have quite as much creepiness or terrifyingness as the two in the front, I would say. But again, any one of these would look terrifying if I saw them directly. Next up is making a detailed, lifelike 3D sculpture. This is critical to express the highest levels of detail, so artists and animators can capture the right feel of the creature. It's hard to design the right sound, movements, and models without a sharp idea of how the creature would look in real life. And then we have a couple of Blender models that are rendered out, and they also look terrifying and very, very good. You can see it has this very lanky, like almost Slenderman-esque type figure. It has incredibly long fingers. You can see in a couple of different frames. It's just very exaggeratedly long limbs and just overall looks incredibly creepy. Like, I know they said they didn't want to go alien look for it, but it does kind of look in that sense. But yes, the fact that it does have arms and legs does give that humanoid type look to it. So it does have that kind of uncanniness. So if this is how it's going to look in any way, shape, or form, it is going to be fantastic. And ultimately, all of these designs are very, very good. Final stage is rendering the creature in the limited polygon art style from Deep Rock Galactic. This process involves dialing down the details a little bit, so Casper's challenge here is to decide what features are most evocative, and how to express that in Rogue Core's art style. Quote, "When we're working with this style, it's about focusing on big gestures and recognizable features," he says. "But a big part is also budgeting our polygons. We've got to think about which areas are the most important to a creature's identity or design, so we can focus our details and shape count there. A lot of the time, we focus on details around the face and hands." And then again, we get another sort of render of one of the designs in the low polygon Deep Rock-esque type style. And I still think that they were able to capture a good amount of what we had seen before in the low polygon art style that Deep Rock is known for, A, for its small size, but also B, because it's just a nice art style to look at. And I think that even with the quote-unquote lower detail, it still looks fantastic, and it still has that kind of really creepy and eerily feel to it. I think that it's really hard to tell the difference between the two of them in some cases. You could definitely tell it's a little bit more low res, but it still has that sort of lanky, scary, uncanny valley-esque type feel to it, which is just insanely creepy. The taxonomy of Rogue Core. As one of the first prototype enemies for Rogue Core, the crawler's design helps set the tone for the rest of the creatures that come after it. Viewed as a whole, the Rogue Core enemies need to make sense together. Expressed visually, they should have some shared traits or perhaps reflect similar adaptations to their subterranean habitat. This isn't to say that every creature will look similar, but in biological terms, they should come from the same taxonomy kingdom. Quote, "Think of a human and a blue whale," Casper says. "These animals do not look alike, but when you start to explore their skeletal structures and their organs and how they function, you can see how they are at least related from the same planet. We'd like to do something similar here." The crawler is still far from finished, and even then, it's still only a prototype. As the design takes shape, it'll also need to work within the constraints of the game engine. This might limit how it can move and interact with terrain, the attack patterns it might have, or how it cooperates with others. Casper's 3D render is the first armature to be imported into the game's engine, and used as a working model. As the animators and game designers explore how the creature works or doesn't work, its appearance and role may transform in response. Quote, "We definitely throw the ball back and forth between departments a lot, and it's still not set in stone at this point," Casper says. "We know we want this somewhat humanoid creature that creeps around, sort of stalks in the shadows type, but beyond that, it's all still flexible." Do you have any suggestions for what you'd like to read in the next Below Decks? Pop in the comments below. Thank you for reading. Okay, so trying to unpack essentially everything that was in that last section, I do think that the idea for the Creeper would be an insanely good idea for Rogue Core to have, just because it shakes up the feel a lot. In normal Deep Rock, there really isn't any enemy that kind of has that same sort of feel to it, except for maybe the cave leeches, just because you don't expect them and then they grab you, or potentially the Mactera grabber. Basically anything that can grab you can kind of be terrifying, but this is kind of going in a very different direction, in a very horror-esque type feel to it. Again, similar to Skinwalkers, similar to something like Slenderman. They're definitely going for a more just creepy design than just a jump scare grab you type thing, which I really, really, really enjoy. I think the comparison between the different taxonomy kingdoms is a great way to think about this kind of stuff. And to say something like that is them basically saying we want a lot of the enemies in Rogue Core to kind of have this same sort of style to it. This creepy, sort of lanky, uncanny valley-esque type thing. And I think a lot of the stuff that we have seen so far has shown that, which I'm very interested to see how that's going to work. Again, keep in mind that, like they said, everything is work in progress, so it's possible that this thing might not even end up in the actual full Rogue Core, but I would absolutely love to see a finalized version of this in Rogue Core, because I think it would shake up things a lot, and the amount of work put into it and just how different it is compared to everything else that we have seen in normal DRG is just absolutely insane, and it's going to shake things up a lot. Ultimately, I think that this is going to be really, really cool to see what exactly Rogue Core is going to be shaping up to be. Because right now, I wasn't really sure exactly what I was going to be seeing. I thought it was going to be similar to Deep Rock Galactic, but just a different type of gameplay. But now I'm seeing that they are taking it into a completely different direction, and I am so excited to see what they're going to be doing with that. In terms for suggestions of what I'd like to see next, if Ghost Ship, if you're watching this, I would like to see some more things about maybe the progression, the kinds of equipment we will have, the kinds of ways we can kit ourselves out, kit our characters out. I think that would be really cool. I know that's still probably a lot further on down the line, but I would love to see stuff like that. But if not, I would also love to just see more enemy designs, see more kinds of unique things that you guys are putting out, because this looks insane so far. But in any event, I just wanted to talk about this and sort of give my thoughts on it as it came out, because I just saw that this popped out and was not expecting it, but I am pleasantly surprised at what I read and what I saw. If you guys are also interested and want to share any of your thoughts and comments down below, please do so. Let me know what you're looking forward to the most about Rogue Core, and if you like this creature design or not, and if you like the sort of horror design, or if you want to keep it similar to what normal DRG has, let me know down below. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful and informative. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because it tells me what types of videos you guys like to see. Rock and Stone Miners, I'll see you in the next video.